Happy to spend a moment with artist Dave McKean at a public showing of a series of paintings he calls Nitrate. And Dave, why don't you quickly tell us the basis of Nitrate, homage to some of your favorite silent films?
Yes, obviously the word comes from the silver nitrate stock that these films were printed on. Yes, my first memories of film really were to do with the stills really rather than the films. And the first book I bought was for myself was a book of horror films, stills. And the older the films were, the more mysterious and the more compelling and stranger they were. And those images, those misty, grainy, hard to make out what was going on images really stayed with me. And they stay with me now. So when I started to make my own films, I kind of went back to what really kicked me off loving film to start with, which was those strange images. And it was films from that era, from the 1910s and 1920s, when the language was being created and when the rules were being written, and they didn't really know how to do it. And so you get this wonderful feeling when you start watching a silent film that I don't know what's coming up. I don't know where I'm going to go with it, which is very rare now. Most modern films, from the first scene, you pretty much know what you're going to see, where you're going to go.
They're in the trappings of story, and there was more experimentation, it seems, in this period, and more concern about images as well as storytelling. You tell me.
Well, the rules of filmmaking had not been established, so stories could hair off in bizarre directions, and then they would have to. If they had to deal with a dream sequence or a doppelganger sequence or something like this, they would have to work out how on earth to do that with very raw equipment.
Absolutely.
Very, very heavy equipment and very basic techniques. And I really love that. I love seeing people struggle with a medium and find solutions, because often the first time you find a solution, it's really magical. You can see their excitement when a double exposure or a cross fade creates an effect that's really quite visceral. And it's visceral now, 100 years later. Imagine what that must have been like at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't help but think of the parallels with some of the innovations of technology now, and that this was really the cutting-edge technology of its time.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, my two favourite periods of filmmaking. I mean, I love lots of films.
Sure.
From across the board. But those early silent films and now.
Interesting.
Because now feels like a new silent era, or a new
visual era, certainly.
A new visual era and a new set of rules being written.
Absolutely.
And people starting to use digital tools, not just to make dinosaurs and spaceships, but to get inside people's heads and show you what people are feeling and thinking, and a whole new way of telling stories is coming out of it.
I wanted to ask about specifically two artists and two filmmakers in particular that you used, Georges Méliès, who a lot of people may know from the Earth to the Moon, the silent film.
Yeah.
And certainly the HBO film even made use of the story of Méliès as well. Mm-hmm. And I found it interesting that you chose this still. You weren't sure where it came from and what film, and I heard that on this tour you kind of discovered a little more information about it.
Yes, this is one of the stills that was printed in this book. And to add to the mystery, every other film still that was in the book had the film title credit. And this is the only one that didn't. It just said a still from the pioneer Georges Méliès, and frustratingly moved on to talk about something else. And I never knew what film it was from, so I could never see the film. I could never track it down. I didn't know what I was looking for. So yes, a film buff here, a friend of Thomas
McGovern,
tracked it down for me, and it's called...
I know Phrenology is in the...
Phrenology Burlesque.
Okay.
The French title. And the English title is something like the man with the skull and the... I don't know what it's called, actually. It's got a strange, a terrible long title. But anyway, I have the title written down. So, yeah. And so...
well, you see...
My final mystery cracked. I'm really glad it's happened here.
Yeah, and it must be surprising to find out the real story behind the, at least a little more information about the film, based as opposed to the still that you used as inspiration.
Yes, I mean it does have a page on IMDb, and it's got a bit of a write-up there.
Wonderful.
And he's put me in touch with a great old book, I think from the 60s about Méliès, that has a piece about this film in it, so I can fill in this gap.
Wonderful. And I know this is the beginning of an entire, I think, is it correct, the hope is to make a book of all the paintings eventually?
Yeah,
and
I'm working towards doing a book.
Okay.
And I think there'll be maybe 30 paintings in the book.
There you go.
Like this, and then maybe a few other things as well. But they'll all be based around silent cinema, the early days of cinema.
Another filmmaker, F.W. Murnau, and...
Well, Murnau's my favourite, really.
That's very cool.
I mean, I love Dreyer and Fritz Lang and lots of others.
Sure.
But Murnau is the one that...
Nosferatu, correct?
I love Nosferatu. He made Faust, which was shown yesterday, and it's absolutely staggering. And he made The Last Man, and he made, then later on made Sunrise, which was a classic.
Absolutely.
But he's the one that really made film into an art form, I think. And he managed to put on celluloid quite intense feelings, and they're quite startling even now. And we watched Faust last night, and certainly there are bits where the effects don't quite work, and there are some strange choices made. But these astonishing images just keep on coming, and they're very influenced by painting and from theatre, and the lighting is so exquisite. I just think it's one of the most beautiful films ever made.
That's wonderful. Now the tour is leaving Chicago and will be heading towards San Diego for the convention, obviously.
Well, I'm going to San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And Tom is taking a booth to San Diego. I'll have one of my paintings.
Wonderful. Which painting will be there?
The painting is from the film Destiny, which is a Fritz Lang film.
Very cool.
Great story about a couple whose child dies, and she confronts death in this strange region that only she can sort of penetrate. And death is surrounded by candles, and every candle represents a human life. And death makes her a deal that if she can prove why a life should be saved in these 3 different stories, then he will give her back her baby.
Excellent.
I mean, a strange premise for a film, but it's very beautiful again. So I've done the portrait of death.
And I've seen the painting that is inspired by the cabinet of Cagliostro, and thank you very much, Calligaro. And my understanding is you're following up with a graphic novel of Calligaro as well?
Oh, that's another thing, yes. I'm doing a graphic novel, and it's called Calligaro.
Okay.
Just to be obtuse. It is a sort of rewriting of the story of Calligaro, but very different.
Okay.
And the original Calligaro had the script had a real anarchist tone at the centre. And the director of the film, Robert Vine, undercut that by putting an introductory scene, an intro and an outro on the script.
Okay.
And bizarrely, that became the thing you really remember, the fact that this whole thing is a dream and it's actually taking place in an asylum. That was not part of the script.
Oh, interesting.
Robert Vine put that on in the end, and it undercut the message. So the writers were not happy, but out of it came the first sort of great twist ending in cinema. So what I wanted to do was try and find a different twist, which I think I've done, but also reinstate the anarchist centre. So it is a truly dark anarchist message in this book, but it will take me a good year or so to do, so that's a ways away.
No worries, we're looking forward to it, and really appreciate the tracks of music, film, and graphic novels that come together when people come to appreciate your work. So, as the fire trucks go by us,
they're coming to get me.
Only Chicago, I'm telling you. No, thank you very much for spending a moment with us. The exhibition is called Nitrate, and we look forward to seeing Destiny at San Diego Comicon and continued success. And I know that the big exhibit is coming in 2010 in Los Angeles.
Yes, a large amount of the paintings and a lot of Tom's extraordinary collection of original cinema posters and some projections, all kinds of things will happen in LA. next year.
We will point people to the Century Guild blog and your own blog as well for further information on that. Thank you for taking a moment with us, Dave McKean.